Hi, I'm Shawn,
Hi, I'm Emily.
and welcome to Impromptu, the podcast where we talk about music and whatever else we feel like. All right, welcome to episode 1, everybody.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! So, Emily and we've had this idea of doing a podcast for a long time now, actually.
Yeah, a couple months
A
at
couple
least.
months. And so we had gone through phases of trying to figure out what platform to use and how are we going to record and what
Mm-hmm.
equipment and all of those logistics. And it
Oh,
finally
and
kind
by
of
the
came
way,
together.
what's the content?
Oh, I mean, we're going to get there. We're going to get
Right,
there.
right. Well, no, I'm saying that was one of our questions. The technology just takes so much time, though.
It really does, especially when we're still like miles apart.
Yes, yes.
So, but we found a platform that we think will work. So we're just going
Mhm.
to give it a try and see how it goes. All right. So, why are we here, Emily?
We are here to talk about music and anything else we friggin' feel like talking about. Because we have a lot of
Amen.
wide and varying interests that start with music, but feel like we branch out quite a bit
Yeah.
in all of our
Um,
conversations.
yeah. I mean, we're both classically trained musicians.
Hmm.
We enjoy all types of music. And most of our conversations revolve around music, although we talk about life and stuff too. But,
Yes.
we both met at Concordia and we've been friends ever since. And so we just kind of wanted to get into that podcast game, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. We're multi hyphenate creative people. So why
Yes,
not add a
exactly.
podcast?
Exactly. All right. So, Emily, why do you think people should listen to our podcast?
Well, we are very charming and good looking and talented. Actually, reverse all of those. Put talented first. Um, and we both love music, and I think we come at music careers, and um, music education from very different kind of backgrounds, from different vantage points.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, I grew up homeschooled, and then I went to college. So a lot of my musical education was, I studied piano from the time I was 4, but then I dabbled in a lot of different instruments and explored folk music and really only honed in on like serious classical. That's when I didn't know I wanted to do that stuff until I was a teenager,
Yeah.
14, 15 years old. And then I dove right into the classical training kind of world once I hit college.
Mm-hmm.
And then you grew up in the public school system, and
Actually,
um,
that's not true.
oh, is
I
it?
grew up in the
Oh,
private school system.
that's right, because you're Catholic.
Yeah, I went
Ish.
to a Catholic elementary. Yeah, Catholic-ish. I went to
Recovery.
went to a Catholic elementary school. Went to a Catholic middle school and a Catholic high school. Um, got a great education, and then I decided as a sophomore in high school that I was going to be a musician. At that point, I'd been playing piano since second grade, and I was in choir at that point. And so kind of fell down to what kind of a musician I wanted to be, whether that was a professional pianist or a choir director, because I've loved both choir and piano up until that point. And so I kind of decided, I think the choir route is going to open up more avenues. So,
And I
I
should
decided,
say, oh,
yeah,
excuse me.
go ahead.
I should also say, we also come to this conversation about music as composers too. So not
Yes.
only do we teach it and we perform it and we study it deeply, but we also, have trained ourselves how to construct it, how to, how do we create an experience for other people that's engaging, and we have that creative outlet as well.
Yeah. I would say you're definitely more on the composer side than I am. Yes, I've done composition, but I typically stick on more of the arrangements of things, like the arrangement sides of things.
That's very true. Yes, I love your arrangements.
Oh, thank you. I worked with the church choir for the last 5 years, and my favorite thing with them was to write arrangements of hymns. With them, I really couldn't do more than 4-part divisi. We were pretty comfortable with doing 4-part. So that was a good challenge for me of how to take all of these musical ideas and make them work with only 4 parts.
Yep, those limitations can really open up so many possibilities, I feel like.
Yes.
I would much rather write for 4 parts than 8 or 12, you know?
Yes. When you're bound to a set of limitations, I think there's much more like that goes into the creative process. So, yeah.
I wish I could arrange stuff for my church choir that I conduct. I just can't do it fast enough.
And that's the thing. Like, sometimes I'll have an arrangement hit me and I'll have it written in hours. But there are other arrangements that I've done that have happened over the course of weeks, and I'm sure the same happens with compositions where all of a sudden you're hit with, just that creative lightning bolt and you just sit down and write and it can be done in a day, or at least the framework can be written in a day. Whereas other times it might take you weeks, months, years even. Sometimes you work on something and put it away and then you bring it back out a couple years later and finish it up. And all of that's okay.
Yeah, it really is. As long as you finish it. I feel like.
That is the ultimate end goal.
Yes. Get that double bar line.
Yeah. It is very nice when it happens.
I have a piano student who he's 7, very conscientious student. And I think he has ADHD. So like very active,
Yep.
But every time we start a new piece, he needs to make all these types of marks on the music. And one thing that he started doing from the very beginning was I told him what the double bar line means. And then he writes the end at the end of every single piece. Just as an extra reminder.
I love it.
I know. If it works, as long as he's practicing, I don't care.
Right. So yeah, we briefly touched on a little bit of our backgrounds, kind of talked a little bit about composition and arranging a little bit. What are some other things that our listeners can expect us to talk about in the future?
Oh gosh, I think, we're going to have conversations with our friends.
Yes.
Who also work in the music field.
Yes.
We've got, composer friends that we went to college with who are pretty darn interesting. And we've got some former professors that I bet we could twist their arm to get on here.
Yes. We like arm twisting.
I think we'll probably end up talking about teaching music and the life of, being a musician in the year 2022 means that you do several things. Even if you have, a 9 to 5, well, it's not a 9 to 5 if you work in the public schools, really.
Yeah, there are days where it's like 7 to 10.
Even if you have those traditional kind of full-time music jobs, you, Shawn, you still have a church choir. You gig at weddings and funerals and stuff, I'm betting, as a pianist.
Yep. Although I don't know if you can I don't know if it's politically correct to say gigging at a funeral.
Well, okay. You have it. You make the money at a funeral.
Yep.
And me, I'm a independent piano teacher with my own studio. I am a music director at a church. I do this composing thing that was never, you know, something I planned to do, but it has taken me in lots of interesting directions. So I think we'll probably talk about like one thing I would like to talk about is just how do we sustain that kind of life? Is it sustainable, really? Um, and stuff like that. That's
Hmm.
a conversation topic that really interests me at this
Yeah.
point in my life.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, though, about the sustainability of it all. And of course, we're going to save that for a much more deep dive for future episode. But, there's outlets that, for me, help just recharge my batteries. And one of those things is the ACDA of Minnesota Summer Dialogue.
Yes.
And some of these conventions and these get-togethers of like-minded people who work in the same field, and it just you're reminded that you're not the only one who goes through these things, and that you have a huge support system. So things like that help keep me going. So yeah. So some of the other things I think that we're gonna chat about in the future are deep dives into different genres of music. So we both love classical music. We both love choral music, but that's not all we love.
Right.
We love jazz music. There's like sacred harp music, tons of different genres, musical theater.
I was listening to her this morning.
Yeah.
I love her so much.
I haven't listened to anything this morning, I don't think. At least that I can remember. So yeah, we're going to chat with guests. We're going to try and bring in people who can offer different perspectives on things than what we have to offer. We want to use this podcast as a platform, not only for us to express our interests, but also to learn, and have you learn along with us.
Yes.
We talked
the
about
learning. That's a.
No,
sorry
you go.
to interrupt, but
gosh, we're Minnesotan.
I know. No, you go first. Nah, it's all right. No, you bring up a good point with the learning, because I feel like, I mean, the last couple of years, ever since 2020, but even before that, but 2020 is when it really boiled up. In the music world, in the classical music world, in the music education world, in composition, there's been a lot of talk about how do we do this in an equitable way? How do we consume music in an equitable way? How do we diversify our own playlists, so to speak? Yep. And so, as you say, we're learning here. We will be talking about genres of music that it's not like our home base. It's something that we are just all learning about together, and we may have our opinions about it and all of that, but we're not claiming to be the authority on jazz music or anything, right. or Maori hakas from New Zealand, which are pretty badass if you go on YouTube and listen to those. Yeah. A lot of times I like to talk about the things that I'm learning about in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that curiosity is going to kind of spill out here. But by no means do I consider myself an authority.
Right.
On these things.
Yeah. That's one of our goals, is just to learn and use this as a learning platform. So,
yeah.
Let's see, what else do we have? Ooh,
There will
So,
also probably be some just stupid, silly stuff from time to time. I hope.
oh, of course. Like, we're going to talk about our experiences of gigging, the good, the bad, the
Yeah.
ugly.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
Um,
hmm Has to happen.
I can't speak on your behalf, but I know for me, I love music theory. So anytime we can
Yes, I
bring,
love it now that I am done with those classes and I survived. Now that I can
yes,
apply those theoretical concepts in my everyday life as a musician, I love it.
um, and we can talk about we could literally talk about this for days of why oral skills matters, but
Heck
um,
yes. Yes.
it's so important when
Because
it.
don't you want to know what pitch your microphone is beeping at? Don't you want
Uh,
to harmonize
yeah,
with your washing machine that's playing Schubert?
all the
You know?
time,
Do
all the
you?
time.
Yeah. Mhm.
Although, unfortunately, the washing machine and dryer we have only buzz, and
Um,
it's not like a really harmonizable, if that's a
uh,
word.
yeah. Harmonious.
Yeah, it's not. You can't
Is it
harmonize
just one
to
of
it.
those harsh meh?
Yes, yes.
Bummer, dude.
Um, alas.
Alas,
Uh,
alack.
we're going to chat about our favorite piano method books. We're both piano teachers,
hmm
um, and kind of the benefits we see from different methodologies. Of course, being choral musicians, we're going to chat about choral music too,
hmm
and kind of our favorites and just some really cool sounding ones. Get some interviews with composers in on here, maybe.
hmm
Um,
For sure.
Gonna chat about movie music. And we were kind of coming up with a list of things to talk about, and one
Mhm.
of them is kind of dissecting and chatting about our favorite Tiny Desk concerts from NPR.
Yes, I am obsessed with NPR Tiny Desk concerts.
They're the best because I think when the artists are in that kind of like intimate setting,
hmm
you get to see a side of them that you don't see when they're on stage performing in front of thousands of people.
Totally.
It's like you get to see the human aspect of who they are as an artist, and I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the layout of a Tiny Desk concert. Yeah. So that's kind of like I don't know if we can call it brief if we're already at 17 minutes, but that's kind of
Right.
an overview
That's a
of
an
what we
overview of.
want this platform to be. So,
Mhm.
what else do we want to chat about in this episode? Kind
In
of our
this episode.
introductory.
Well, let's see. Well, tell a little bit about like what are you doing right now? You've got, this cool thing that you're gonna
Oh
do in a
yeah.
couple months here
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
continue your musical professional journey.
Yeah. So before I jump into what I'm going to be doing, I guess I'm going to set up kind of a framework of how I got here.
Mhm.
So I'm going to kind of pick up from where I left off in the story of when I was in high school as a sophomore, kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And I decided at that point I was going to be a choral conductor. So I chatted with a piano teacher of mine at the time, and I said, I want to be a choir director. Where do I look? And he listed off, the stereotypical Lutheran choral colleges. There was Concordia, Luther, St. Olaf, Augsburg, Gustavus. I think there may have been one or two more on there, but those were the five that I applied to. I ended up getting accepted into Concordia and a couple others, but Concordia is the one that felt like home to me when I went and toured. And so that's the one I stuck with. So I graduated from Concordia in the spring of 2017 and got a job teaching in Battle Lake, Minnesota. I was teaching K-12 vocal music down there, and I taught for 5 years, along with doing the church choir down there. And I decided that at that point in my career, it was time to push myself to get my master's degree. So I applied and auditioned at NDSU, and I was accepted into their Masters of Choral Conducting program, which I will begin this fall. So that's what I have to look forward to. How about you, Emily? What's going on in your world?
My world. Well, let's see. One thing that I've been doing, this was the project itself finished up a couple months ago, but there have still been kind of some ripples since then. One of my most recent composition adventures was I applied for and received a commission from an ensemble in the Twin Cities called, or a nonprofit in the Twin Cities called Voices of Hope.
Mm-hmm.
And Voices of Hope operates in the choir, excuse me, Voices of Hope operates in the Shakopee Women's Correctional Facility. So that's in southern Minnesota, if you're not familiar with this area. And so it's a choir that operates in the prison. Siri just turned on, and I don't know why. Excuse me. It just bleeped at me. So I spent about 6 months writing a piece of music for these group of women. And it was, you were talking about limitations and constraints making
Mm-hmm.
the compositional process. It was really cool to work on because I had so many constraints and limitations. It had to be something that was easy to learn fast in a short amount of time.
Yep.
Because in prison, they meet once a week for rehearsals, but sometimes they can be put on security lockdowns that postpones everything for like 10 days.
Wow.
And then we add COVID into the mix. So I said they meet once a week for rehearsals. They don't do that currently.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been doing that since 2020 now. And in the prison system, COVID is still raging. So people's health is really at risk by gathering in person to sing.
Yep.
So I had to write this in a way that was something that you could learn quickly, something that you could learn successfully by ear, because you don't want to assume that everyone in there knows how to read music,
Right.
because they don't. The range of the piece had to be fairly small because there are people of wide variety of ages. Some people have damaged voices from, maybe smoking or other lifestyle things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't have as wide of a color palette to work with, so to speak. But that's okay, because I'm pretty happy with what it turned out.
Yeah.
With what I ended up with. And what was really neat about this project was that the lyrics of the piece were written by someone who actually is in the choir. So I got to study this poem written by a woman, and it was handwritten. The communication aspect was really interesting because I got to learn a little bit about this person who wrote the words.
Yep.
But we were only able to communicate by writing letters to each other. So I would write a letter, I would scan it, email it, send it to the conductor. The conductor would pass that on to a corrections officer in Shakopee. And then the officer would read it, proof it, make sure it's okay, and then hand deliver it to the woman, the author of the text.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing about this process is simple, really. Even if you just want to send a simple note, it's a whole process. So it was a really
Yeah.
interesting learning experience, not just to figure out how to write a simple and accessible but meaningful piece of music, but also just learning about the prison system itself and gosh, how messed up it is in a lot of ways.
Right.
So that's been something on my mind lately. The piece itself is finished. It's been recorded, not by the Voices of Hope Choir, but
Mhm.
it's been recorded by the women's ensemble at University of Minnesota Twin Cities. So that was very gracious of them to collaborate with us because as composers, it's important for us to have some sort of recording to hold on to
Yep.
and to use for promotional purposes and things like that. And with COVID, unfortunately, I don't know when this piece will actually get performed in Shakopee. So, yeah, it was cool to finish the project, but then also like, huh, will I ever get to hear this? I wonder. Will they ever get to sing it together? I don't know yet.
If there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
And I think with something um this profound, they'll be able to do it in some
Yes.
capacity. So
Yes. May take longer than any of us would like, but I'm sure it'll happen at
yeah,
some point.
the thing with COVID is you just have to have grace with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like there's so many aspects of a world that are trying to make the transition back to normalcy
Mm-hmm.
when it's not ready. Sure that there are some aspects that are ready to go back and have been back, but there's other things too that are trying to be forced and pushed to return to quote unquote normal that aren't ready yet. So I think that's something that I think, you know, I don't know if we're ever going to get to a post COVID time in our lives, honestly, but
Mm-hmm.
the
I
one
don't
thing
think
that I
we
think
will.
we can all take away is we can always have more grace with every aspect of our lives.
Yes, I love that. And I'm trying to internalize that this week, especially because, as I mentioned to you before, I've been exposed to COVID this
Mm-hmm.
week and am suddenly back to a personal lockdown mode. How do I do this again? How did I, you know,
Yep.
there's been a lot of blame, self blame the last couple of days where I thought, oh, I thought I was doing everything right. How could I let this happen? But just remembering to have some grace and it's a disease. It does what it wants. It's a virus.
Yep.
It's not a moral failing to be in this situation.
Right.
Unless you've been an anti-vaxxer from the very beginning, then
Mm-hmm.
mm.
Yep. Okay. So I think that was a successful first episode. How about you?
I think so too.
Yeah.
We don't have to end it on my anti-vaxxer thing.
Now let's circle back to um what should we circle back to? I'm just going through my list of stuff. Let's circle back to the question of why should people care about this podcast?
Say again?
Let's circle back to the question of why should people care about the podcast?
Mm-hmm.
And like why should they keep coming back to listen? And to repeat again, the whole goal of this podcast is for all of us to learn. Even though we're going to talk about things that interest us, we're going to talk about things that we don't have as much knowledge of that we want to learn more about. And we hope that you'll learn with us in the process. So,
Yeah. I think one reason you should care and listen to this podcast is a lot of the music related podcasts, music related podcasts out there in the choral world too, especially, are made by people who are very established and have like they're passing on this wisdom or from all these years of experience, whereas we're still kind of finding our way.
Oh yeah.
But we have valuable experiences to share.
Yes.
And we're finding our way in a time where everything around us is changing pretty dramatically. The way things are being taught, the way we make livings as musicians, um, the opportunities to make music are changing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an interesting perspective, I believe.
Yes. Oh,
But
we'll
we're
have to
also
have an
not like
episode.
doom and gloom all the time either.
We'll also have to have an episode of what it was like teaching in the heart of COVID.
Oh my God. Do we have to? I might have to like do
We'll
some
see.
extra
We'll see.
meditation that day.
But I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah.
that was like, at least for
Feelings are
me,
trauma.
that was half of my career so far.
Right.
Really?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's plenty of things I could talk about there, and I'm sure you could too. So maybe we'll save that for another episode.
Sure.
Maybe we'll just get too sad and table it instead. But
There will
we'll have
be
to find
one
out.
episode that is just crying. And you're welcome to cry.
Yes. Great ideas. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there, folks. Thanks for tuning in and listening, and we're looking forward to making our next one pretty soon. So until then, farewell.
Farewell. So long. Oh, I did it wrong. Shoot.
Oh.